bit earlier today, John and I hosted an event at New York City's Core Club with two important political fundraisers for the leading presidential hopefuls. We were joined by Anthony Scaramucci, who is the founder of an investment firm and a Trump economic policy advisor, and Marc Lasry, a hedge fund manager and an advisor to Hillary Clinton. Here is what Scaramucci had to say about what he thinks of Donald Trump's chances of winning the presidential election.
I would say that right now, and I think Mark would probably agree with me, there's a 1 in 5 shot, or 1 in 10, somewhere between 1 in 10, 1 in 5. Because what you know about politics is that anything can happen. Look at the polls.
So
I would say 20%. I'm hoping he has a higher chance than that. That's the prediction mark.
The mooch later took to Twitter to reiterate that his political forecast was based on polling and prediction markets, but that Mr. Trump, quote, always exceeded those expectations. So what do you think of one of Donald Trump's supporters suggesting that his chances are not a mortal lock?
Well, I thought Scaramucci was being honest there, and he was fairly to be totally fair to him. He defended Donald Trump throughout the thing, made a lot of arguments in favor of why he was still with Donald Trump, made an extended argument for why he was still with him even after what came out in these tapes. But, you know, he can read the polls. These guys work with numbers all day long. They're looking at numbers, and he is looking at the prediction markets, and he's looking at the polls that we've all seen, and making, I think, a pretty accurate assessment of where anybody who's actually in touch with reality would think the race is right now.
Part of the problem for Donald Trump right now goes back to something we discussed before. Every Trump surrogate's going to be asked about the controversies involving the Trump campaign because everybody's hearing all about them. They involve Donald Trump himself.
Yeah.
The problem is Democratic surrogates, members of Congress, fundraisers, people like Marc Lasry, they're not being asked about every Clinton scandal, in part because reporters can't keep up with the minutia of every one of them,
right,
and in part because not everyone's going to have an opinion about it or should be called on to have an opinion about it.
And as I said before, they're just not as relatable. You can ask Scaramucci about what does his wife think about Trump, what does his daughters, what does he say to his daughters? That's a question.
But if you asked a Clinton surrogate, what does your wife think about, or your husband think about
Donna Brazil's
maybe
passing a question from a debate?
It's not the same. It's hard. It's not fair to the Republicans in some ways, but I see the dynamic and why it exists.
All right, that was not all that Anthony Scaramucci had to say about this election. Here's what he told us when we asked him what Donald Trump should do between now and November if he wants to win the election.
What I would be focused on right now is I would get a balance sheet out, and I would get those 90-second clips that he did, the one that he did on Friday night, or the apology, and I would say, okay, here's where I stand on these issues. This is why it's beneficial to working class families and the middle class. This is where the secretary stands on those issues. This is why these issues will be debilitating to the middle class. And I would stream it and go right over the top of the mainstream media, right to the American people, and more so than he can with a 20 or 30,000 person crowd. And I would lay out each thing, whether it's immigration, trade, any of these things. I would also get his surrogates to be better coordinated than they currently are, so that when that message is coming out from him, they can go out with a message that's similar to the message that he's beaming in on the 90 seconds.
Of course, Scaramucci, they're making an argument for Trump being basically policy-focused at the very moment that Trump was releasing the ad attacking Hillary Clinton and raising her health. So it's an interesting prescription, but kind of fantasy land. Again,
from yesterday, spending time watching Mike Pence give a couple speeches, they have a policy argument that revs up the base, I think, in a broader base than the tack Trump is taking now. But he obviously is not going to pursue a campaign based on policy, and the new ad today makes that pretty clear.
Yeah.
All right, during the event, Marc Lasry, the Democrat, also talked about his belief that centrism in this country has now shifted to the left.
At the end of the day, right now, with the issues that we have, and you've seen it with what's happened with Bernie, I think our country, what was center has moved a little bit. It isn't where it was 4 years ago or 8 years ago. You are going to need more government intervention. I know, the feeling is for it to be in the center, it's less government intervention. But I think with the issues that you have out there, you're going to need more government intervention.
So I asked him, as I do a lot of Clinton surrogates, what position she's taken in the center, and he didn't really have an answer.
Right, and I think I don't know if the center shifted, because clearly the right has moved further to the right, the left's moved further to the left. But I think we're in the things that Marc Lasry is concerned about economic stuff. There's no doubt, I think, that the Democratic center has moved to the left, and cultural politics across the country have moved to the left. You have gay marriage legalization.
In economics, you never hear talk about reforming entitlements,
No.
reinventing government, eliminating waste.
No. Well, those are
None of
90s
that
arguments.
is.
Those are 90s New Democrat arguments, and the party's not where that. It's not like that anymore in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
It just has moved to the left.
Yeah. It's fascinating to hear those two guys who are friendly with each other agree about a fair amount, including both of them thinking that a President Clinton and a Speaker Ryan could actually
Get a lot
some
of work
stuff
done. Yeah, very smart guys.
Yep.